Be so good they cannot ignore you. This is the advice we often hear when struggling to get noticed as creators. While mandatory, this must be coupled with relentless self-promotion, or as Austin Kleon says in Show Your Work, sharing and posting must be baked into your process. They make you discoverable not by wasting time quote-unquote networking, but by actually leveraging the network. A true alternative to self-promotion for those of us who hate it. Since that includes me, I'll share a few cross-referential reflections on concepts in Show Your Work I found particularly impactful. For those new to my work, I go by the name of PLTB. I am a creator discussing psychology, philosophy, human potential, and of course, creativity. Recently, I also began incorporating discussions of my tools, so stick around if that sounds interesting, and if it doesn't, no hard feelings. Scenius. Unlike self-promotion, which can feel like pushy marketing, sharing forges meaningful connections. However, doing it effectively requires first shedding an unproductive notion, namely the lone genius myth. Legendary musician Brian Eno emphasizes that creativity is not quote-unquote inherently antisocial. We actually thrive when we find the Scenius, which is a culture and demographic forming an ecology of talent. And as Kleon explains, many of the people who we think of as young geniuses were actually part of a whole scene of people who were supporting each other, looking at each other's work, copying from each other, stealing ideas, and contributing ideas. Scenius does not take away from the achievements of those great individuals. It just acknowledges that good work isn't created in vacuum and that creativity is always in some sense a collaboration, the result of mind connected to other minds. And this is also stressed in The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. Culturally, people like the Invisible Scratch Pickles and the Beat Junkies emerged from the Bay Area's turntablism mobile era, and while that was underground, the works of people like Hubert became a cross-cultural phenomenon. Similarly, artists like Copto, Scene, Ramosi, Basquiat, Futura, and Fame received global recognition by leveraging the momentum of the birthing graffiti and hip-hop culture. Now, esoterically, such collectives can be understood as egregores or group minds. According to Mark Stavish, an egregore is an autonomous psychic entity composed of and influencing the thoughts of a group of people. The good news is that you don't have to be a genius. Just contribute to the genius you want to be part of. Become a microcosmic reflection of that as a macrocosm. Today this is easier than ever as the internet is basically a collection of geniuses beyond geographical boundaries. On the internet, you can contribute to any community. However, challenges remain as some platforms prioritize content based on location. Let me know your thoughts. Be a fan first. Whether you look at it culturally, esoterically, or both, one thing is essential: being a fan of the culture you aspire to. Without that, nothing really works, as the collective will not recognize you as one of them, nor they would relate to your work. Conversely, experimenting can help with self-discovery and identifying where you belong. Sometimes that happens accidentally, like me and fitness, and more recently esotericism. Although I engage in both daily, I find it almost impossible to consume most of the content. Exceptions include Andrew Huberman, Aubrey Marcus, Heinz, etc. On the contrary, I can actually binge watch people like Christian Mategrap, Golxart, Matatia, Creative Ryan, Rick Rubin, Life of Frieza, and many others. Let me know if that resonates. If you want fans, you have to be a fan first. If you want to be accepted by a community, you have to first be a good citizen of that community. If you're only pointing to your own stuff online, you're doing it wrong. You have to be a connector. Use your voice. Sharing what you love is the key to finding your voice. And besides contributing to a Scenius, this basically enables you to exist. As Kleon says, in this day and age, if your work isn't online, it doesn't exist. We all have the opportunity to use our voices and to have our say, but so many of us are wasting it. If you want people to know about what you do and the things you care about, you have to share. Be an amateur. While sometimes underrated, embracing an amateur mindset provides several key benefits. It brings enthusiasm, it releases the pressure to always deliver as quote-unquote professionals, and it fosters experimentation, engaging our childlike curiosity. In the words of the Zen monk Shinryu Suzuki, in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, in the expert's mind there are a few. According to Clive Staples Lewis, the fellow pupil can't help more than the master because he knows less. The difficulty we want him to explain is one he has recently met. The expert met it so long ago he has forgotten. This is why so many create their best works when they create for their past selves. It is the 7th or 8th grader teaching the 4th or the 3rd. Lifelong learning. There is no option but to become a lifelong learner, using failure as a feedback, as also emphasized by psychocybernetics. Transcending location, at least on paper, implies our work competes globally. The world is changing at such a rapid rate that it's turning us all into amateurs. Even for professionals, the best way to flourish is to retain an amateur spirit and embrace uncertainty and the unknown. Coders keep learning new technologies, creators push their craft's envelope one piece at a time. It's not about perfection, but about moving the needle even so slightly. Like Sisyphus, the journey lies in the progress made with each attempt, learning, evolving, and moving forward. Consider sharing your thoughts. Embrace vulnerability. When you put your work into the world, you have to be ready for the good, the bad, and the ugly. The more people come across your work, the more criticism you'll face. Fear is often just in the imagination, taking a wrong turn. Bad criticism is not the end of the world. As far as I know, no one has ever died from a bad review. Take a deep breath and accept whatever comes. The more you succeed, the more haters you'll have. While inevitable, this shouldn't deter you. Kleon suggests rolling with the punches and basically building a thick skin. So, do not care about the opinions of people you don't care about, but only about those you actually do. Courage. This is why I believe courage, not self-confidence, keeps us going as creators. One of the best pieces of advice I heard on this is from Gary Vee, using NFL and NBA players as examples. It was something along the lines of, imagine you're on the field. Inevitably you get both boos and cheers, but neither should distract you from bringing your A game as a player. Death. Mentioning courage, the Stoics recognize death as an incredible guide. A similar perspective is also found in Carlos Castaneda's teachings, and it happens that Kleon and Steve Jobs agree with both. Remembering it's all coming to an end is extremely liberating, as it enables us to 1. Put things into perspective, and 2. See our priorities clearly. No matter how overwhelming, doubt, shame, and even utter lack of confidence perish when that is considered. Near-death experiences change the lives of creators like George Lucas, and while they are not mandatory, you can read obituaries of other remarkable individuals as a morning ritual. This makes you want to live maximally fully. Another way to embrace memento mori is by carrying a subtle reminder. For me, it was getting a watch after turning 35 and mourning my cat's death. For a Jim Buddy, a tattoo on his back, and for Tim Ferriss, a little skull hidden in his first book. Let me know about you. Daily Dispatch. Sharing a little something daily creates a huge difference, making every day count and keeping you connected with your audience. I use reflections or quotes from my upcoming videos, but that can be something different. Whether it helps the algorithm, it is meaningful to me, and sometimes people comment that these posts have a direct application in their current situation in life. Many creators get inspired by Seth Godin's daily blog post. A figure who inspires me is Cagliostro, the inventor of the Egyptian rite in Freemasonry. As one coming from the south and the brilliant light of noon, with full knowledge of nature and active communion with God, I now go toward the north into the fog, and abandoning at every step a piece of myself, giving way, diminishing at each stop, leaving a little more light for you, a little more clarity and warmth, a little more vitality until the end of my journey, when the rose blossoms in its fullness on the cross. I'm Cagliostro. Teach what you know. The best way to learn something is to actually teach it. Jim Quick. The so-called Feynman technique goes beyond standard active recall methods. Invented by Dr. Richard Feynman, it involves explaining concepts as if teaching someone else, who is your past self and your audience several grades behind. Kleon offers to teach personal breakthroughs and insights from your progress. No, this doesn't give your so-called secrets away. It actually preserves your work and proficiency, it lets you build authority, and it embeds your mastery into who you are while eternalizing it in the objective. So it is profoundly spiritual, transcending the limitations of the self. Consider Think Media's Sean Cannell feeling ready to die as his children have a full catalog of his wisdom thanks to content creation. Based on personal experience, the more groundbreaking an idea or an approach, the more it deserves to be shared. The more relevant it is to the person you currently are, also the more it must be shared. Teaching people doesn't subtract value from what you do, it actually adds to it. When you teach someone how to do your work, you are in effect generating more interest in your work. People feel closer to you because of letting them in on what you know. Birth, death, rebirth. When you feel like you've learned whatever there is to learn from what you're doing, it's time to change course and find something new to learn, so that you can move forward. You can't be content with mastery. You have to push yourself to become a student again. In the words of Alain de Botton, anyone who isn't embarrassed of who they were last year probably isn't learning enough. Ryan Holiday and some mystery schools would agree that climbing one mountain exposes another higher peak, which is another initiation or grade. Besides tapping into your full potential, this allows you to deliver actually unique work. It lets you form what Robert Greene calls a Da Vinci perspective. Robert Anton Wilson and Naval Ravikant would agree that specialization is for insects. As Naval elaborates, if you go to a circus and see a bear, that's kind of interesting, but not that much. If you see a unicycle, that's interesting, but if you see a bear on a unicycle, that's really interesting. All humans are broad, but we get summarized in petty ways. At some deep level, we know that is not true. Every human is capable of experiencing every experience and every thought. Everyone should be able to do everything. You've got one life. By constantly reinventing yourself, you become your own unique version of the quote-unquote unicycle riding bear and the Vitruvian man or woman. The creator economy favors polymaths and T-shaped individuals. Becoming one is not just practical, but also deeply spiritual and human. It aligns with the principle of Yao or birth, death, rebirth, which, according to one prophet, isn't meant to be experienced once, but repeatedly in a lifetime. Think of it as living multiple lives in one, each tied to a distinct purpose or meaning, as Woe therapy teaches. But that's just my opinion. Let me know if you agree, subscribe, check the links in the description, and thank you for your time.